del sal, rumor junto al mar. Cumbia del sal, rumor junto al mar. Cumbia del sal, rumor junto al mar. Cumbia del sal, rumor junto al mar. Ay, 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 ay. Cumbia del sal, rumor junto al mar. Cumbia del sal, rumor junto al mar. ¡Hey!
Thank you. You're so kind.
Cumbia del sal, rumor junto al mar. Cumbia del sal, rumor junto al mar.
All right, hey y'all. Welcome back to E4 Youth Virtual Talk Series. My name is Jalesha Bass, and I'm your host today for the Virtual Talk Series. I am a digital docent with E4 Youth, and I am currently a rising senior at the University of Texas at Austin. I am a double major in journalism and communications and leadership. So your girl almost done. This Virtual Talk Series is a time where we talk to different creatives in the field about the different work that they do, and they give advice to us, our students, in our program about what we can do to sort of get into those different fields. During our time, I'll sort of talk to Greg. We'll have a conversation, and then at the end, I'll give way for Q&A. But you can send your questions in the chat at any point, and we'll make sure to throw those in on the screen whenever we do our Q&A. Now, for our speaker today, his name is Greg Gonzalez. So Greg is a Grammy award-winning musician, producer, and educator in Austin, Texas. He is a founding member and manager partner of the band Grupo Fantasma, Brownout and Money Chicha. He has recorded and participated in the production of dozens of albums, as well as toured and performed extensively in North America, Europe, and Asia. Greg was named the musical ambassador for the city of Austin in 2019 and has coordinated multiple tours and made marketing plans and album releases as well. So, welcome to the stage, Greg Gonzalez.
Hello.
Hi.
How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Hanging in there.
Okay. Okay. Well, just start us off. Tell us about what you do and all those good things.
Sure. Well, I think you put it out there. Most of the stuff that I've done, I founded multiple bands here in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an educator.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to being a performer and a musician, I've been a speaker and a consultant, and a producer and a songwriter. And more recently, I'm about to, or I've begun my graduate studies at the University of Texas, working on a master's degree now in advertising.
Dang, that's a lot of stuff. I mean, okay, so you're doing a lot of stuff right now. I mean, I really want to know, how did you get there? So, what were you like as a teenager, and how did you really discover like your passions?
Okay. As a teenager, I was a bit of an outcast. I grew up in Laredo, Texas, which is on the border with Mexico. Some people say it's the least diverse city in America because it's 96% Hispanic, mostly Mexican American, which is funny, but it was interesting. When I first moved to Austin, I was like, where are all the Latinos?
Right.
And not that there aren't a lot here, but it was totally shocking to me because that was all I interacted with, and at the time, borders were not as strict. There wasn't as much paranoia as there is now. There was a lot more cultural exchange. And I went to Mexico pretty much every single day as a teenager to go see music, to hang out with friends, to eat food, to do things I probably shouldn't have been doing as a teenager, yeah, so in my teenage years, I was a bit of an outcast, I am biracial. My father is Chicano or Mexican American, whatever. I guess you'd call Latinx at this point, and my mother is white. And being in a town that was primarily, Latino, I kind of was like a little bit of an outcast there. On top of that, I was hanging out with musicians and how do you put it? Like, not really musicians, but like the punk rockers and the alternative rockers and the people who were a little more outlandish and artistic in our ways as a teenager. Back then, and I don't know, probably still the same. Laredo was very conservative, believe it or not. Very conservative kind of environment down there. So that was me as a teenager. I always knew I wanted to do something creative. I wanted to be a musician. As soon as I discovered music, I thought, this is something that I really feel that means a lot to me. Probably around the age of 13 or 14 is when I moved to Laredo from living in the lower Rio Grande Valley and around Brownsville, Harlingen, Olmito, and Los Fresnos. And I didn't know anybody, and everybody was like, who's this new guy? He's a weirdo. We don't want to hang out with him. And I fell in with some people who were into heavy metal and they were looking for a bass player. And I was like, oh, I got a bass at my house. My brother had owned a bass and he was kind of a problem child at the time. So he had this trashed out bass that he never played in the closet. And I dug it out and started messing around with it and listening to rock and roll and heavy metal. 'Cause up to that point, I listened to whatever was on the radio, which, if I can date myself, was like early hip hop. That's basically all I listened to back then, was early radio hip hop stuff like MC Hammer and Young MC, and that's how, dated myself, right? Stuff like that, Two Live Crew, NWA. That was my era. Even some Public Enemy and stuff like that. But then these guys were all in heavy metal, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna start listening to heavy metal and punk rock. I got into like Metallica and things like that. Started playing music and started listening to classic rock things like Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath. I really became passionate about music. Being somewhat of an outcast and finding other people who were into music, it really became a source of identity for me and a way for me to communicate with people and to find other people who didn't quite fit in and who wanted to express themselves and whatnot. So that was my goal, was to be a musician. I just didn't know how to get there. You know, I always, I had good grades. I was a smart kid. I read a lot, you know, and I didn't know what it would look like to be a musician, because neither of my parents were musical at all. My mother's a nurse. My father's an accountant, you know, so they did okay. I was just, you know, solidly middle-class family or whatever. But at the same time, I needed an outlet. You know, they were working all the time, and I found some people, and that was kind of where I found my expression. Originally, I thought I would, you know, at first I balked at the idea of going to college. You know, they had tried to get me to go to the University of Texas. They came to recruit students, and since I was a good student, they even took me to Austin back in my junior year, and took me to the campus and stuff. And I really loved Austin right away. I was like, man, this is a cool town. I want to live here, you know. But I also didn't really think I wanted to go to college. You know, I wanted to get busy with life right away. So I thought I'll go to technical school. And I went to study electrical engineering, because my thinking was I could learn how to create, you know, musical equipment, repair musical equipment. You know, I was all about amplifiers and little pedals and synthesizers and things like this. I thought I could learn how to make these. I want to do that. And I ended up moving to Harlingen to go to technical college. And I was like, man, this is not for me. It was just not like a creative, inspiring environment. I hadn't realized. Say what?
Oh, I just say, yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't realize that. You know, I was young, and I just kind of wanted to get out. And I was like, oh, I can knock this out in 2 years. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make money right away, you know. Mm-hmm. But then just realizing that there was no creative outlet, that people weren't interested in that I left all my friends behind. I had already started playing music professionally at the time. So I was like just a guy in a dorm with my roommate who didn't understand me at all. And he was just like, man, you're always reading books. You should probably like go to college, like a real college, you know, because that's all I did. Like, I didn't know anybody. This was like a different era, you know. I didn't have cable. They didn't have internet, you know. So I went to the library every day, and I got books, and I read like 5 books a week, not a day, I wish. But I would just like read books, go to class, come back, read books, play the bass. That was all I did. You know, I ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
I mean, okay, well, if all you did was read books all day, you know, how did you break into the industry? You know, like, how did this happen?
Well, after I realized that I didn't fit in with technical school, right? I was like, I need to get back to where my people are, back to Laredo. I need to get back to Austin. I was like, that's where the music is. I need to do music. I just like that time made me realize I needed to do music. And I was like, well, you know what? UT already wants me. I do like to read. I do like to study. And I realized that I also was passionate about history, which was like one of the things I was always reading about. So it's like, I'm going to go study history. But it was kind of like, but on the side, I want to learn music. You know, I want to try and get into the music field. And my thinking was like, I'll go to UT, I'll study history, I'll play music on the side. My goal is to get a history degree and then to get into law school. I was like, I'll be a lawyer because I like to talk. I was good with people. I thought music industry always needs lawyers. I could make some real money. I could still work with musicians. And they said history was a good way to get into that because you do so much research and reading. And that's really a lot of what law school's about, you know, understanding precedents and building cases and things like that, right? So I came up here and I started going to college and I started playing with bands again. And I fell in with some of the cats that I ended up forming my band Grupo Fantasma with. I was playing music with the same people I had been playing music with in Laredo. My friend Beto Martinez is a guitar player. And I had a few other friends. We all basically moved up to Austin and we're like, well, let's bring the band together, right? But then I met some other dudes. I met Adrian Quesada, who was also from Laredo, Texas, who was going to UT separately to go to art school. And I also met Dave Lobel, who was a saxophone player, and they both had a band called Blue Noise Band, and my band from Laredo was called The Blimp. And so we were like, well, let's join those two bands together. And we were playing like college parties, right? And we had like this really dumb band. There's like everybody joined together, right? It was like just kind of like all together now jam funk band, right? And it was just like a party band that played all the co-ops and all the college parties. And we had, the name of the band was the Young Silly, starts with a B, sounds like snitches. You know, that was the name of our band, the Young Silly.
Wait, how did y'all come up with this name? Where did this come from?
I did not come up with that name. Somebody else came up with the name, but that was just the name of the band. And we played like Earth, Wind, and Fire and like Kool and the Gang, all this funk music that we were into, you know.
All this while in school.
All this while in school, yeah.
That's tea.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like I was living a double life. You know, I was going to school all day long, getting my grades, and then in the night or whatever, I would just practice music. I didn't have a life. I didn't go out. I wasn't trying to like, you know, pick up girls or anything like that. I was just like focused on music, you know. So I would go home and practice. I would practice like 4 hours a day, bass, piano, drums, guitar. I was learning how to produce music on the computer on my side. On the side, I had got on my first computer to go to college, you know.
Well, so, why was you doing all that practicing if you were still going to school to be a lawyer? I feel like a lot of like creatives, even people in our own program, like they're in E4 Youth and they want to do like all these different like creative jobs, but they be going to school for like engineering, like to be a doctor. And I just be like, what do you really want to do? How did you do this? Like, how did this path like come about?
Well, you got to understand, like I said, neither of my parents were musicians or artists or whatever. They were a nurse and an accountant, you know, and they were like, you need to make a living, you know, that music is great. That can be a side thing. That can be fun. We know you're passionate about it. But at the end of the day, we're not going to help you out to go to college. We're not going to, you know, that's just like, you're going to be broke. You're not going to be able to make a career out of it. Like to them, musician was not a job. That was like a hobby. You know what I mean? That's why I couldn't tell them that I was like studying so hard on the side to be a musician, because there was no belief that was a thing. Like, you know what I mean? And I didn't even believe it. I was like, well, I'm going to try this, but you know, low key, I didn't believe it myself. I thought, well, I'm going to have to be a lawyer. I'm going to have to, like, just like when I went to technical school, I thought I was going to have to repair amps and build keyboards and do other stuff so that I could do music on the side, you know. It never occurred to me that music would be the main thing. That didn't come till much later that it occurred to me, really. Like, I graduated from college with a history degree, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a year off or whatever to just kind of get myself together, travel, see some things, and I'm gonna go back for law school, you know. That was my whole plan. I was like, I'm gonna go to Europe. I got one of those little rail passes to go backpack around. You know, I have a friend who's a truck driver at the time. I was like, I'm gonna go on the road with him and see the United States, see the country. You know, I did some temp jobs, like working for a moving company, doing all kinds of dumb stuff, just like, because I didn't believe in myself that I could be a musician, you know. I didn't think that was an option for me. You know, I didn't play in band in school. I never had mentors who told me what I had to do to succeed there, you know. Like I said, one of the reasons I'm an educator now is because I want to teach people the stuff that I wasn't taught. You know, I want them to have the mentorship that I wasn't allowed to have. People who can tell you, this is a career path. You can make this work. You know, believe in yourself and don't short sell the power of your creativity to create opportunity for yourself, right? But at the time, I didn't believe that. You know, I did all this traveling. I came back. I was broke. I got a little job at a coffee shop, and some of my friends the same friends I had that band with, we were like, let's try something different. You know, we'd been listening to this music from Colombia and Mexico and South America called cumbia that we had grown up with on the border. You know, everybody played cumbia, and we didn't listen to it when we were down there because we were like, Like we just thought of that as like the music that we hear when we go to Mexico and it's fun and it's a party, but really we were into rock and roll and funk and blues and jazz and all this other stuff. But then we came up here and we were like, man, nobody's playing this. And we saw that there was like a community like us, you know, Latinos who came to college, Latinos who didn't necessarily fit the mold of the conservative border culture, who didn't know where they fit. They had they struggled with their identity, you know, because they were like, they wanted to appreciate their culture and their heritage, their abuelas and their food and their parents, and they speak some Spanish and they listen to that music, but they also were Americans like us. They listen to hip hop, they listen to funk and heavy metal and whatever, you know, and they didn't see any of that reflected who they were. They didn't see Latino funk bands and rock bands, and they didn't see cumbia bands that weren't like dudes from South America or Puerto Rico or the Caribbean. You know, to them it was like foreign, and they kind of didn't have a spot there. You know, we would go see bands play salsa music and we loved it, but we didn't fit in with that. You know, we weren't Puerto Ricans. It wasn't our culture, you know, and we didn't know all the dance moves and all that stuff.
Right.
So we started playing this cumbia music with the same setup that we had before. And we didn't even understand it enough to do it right. We were like, we're going to play that music, but we did it with funk band, rock band, hip hop style, you know, because that's what we knew, you know. So we're singing in Spanish, we're playing songs in Spanish based around this style of music, but we're interpreting it through the culture of Americans, you know. And we, without knowing it, without realizing it, we hit on something that was fire. Like the first time we played, it was packed, and you're like, oh, that was great. That was a fluke. Let's do it again. Next time it was like sold out, and there was like a line down the block. You're like, what's going on here? We did it a couple more times, and eventually, like, we were too big for the club. Every time we played, it was insane. And we were just like, dude, maybe this is the band that we were supposed to have all along, you know? Like, we still couldn't believe it ourselves, you know? We thought it was like a fluke. You know, it took me 10 years or longer to realize, you know what? We hit on something that was there, like American people, Latinos, people who love Latin culture and American culture and don't like these little boxes like, oh, that's hip hop, that's for the hip hop people. This rock, that's for the rock people. This cumbia and salsa, that's for them. Like, nah, man, people wanted to get together and appreciate each other's expressions, and they wanted to feel safe. They wanted to be in a place where they could hear Latin music, but not feel like they're getting stared at. Like, who's this weird dude here? You know, you're at the Latin club, you're not wearing the shiny shirt. You don't know that salsa dance moves. You know what I mean? Or you wanted to like be able to go to the rock show, but maybe you didn't want to be that grimy. You wanted to like take your girl out and have a good time, you know? You wanted to have a dance party where everybody could interact and mingle, and it was like it was a format where everybody could just like, you know, come together and express themselves and enjoy a form of inclusivity and diversity, you know, while also having a good time. So that was kind of the situation. Like, that's how I fell into the industry. It was like on accident. Like, I finished college thinking I'm gonna take a year off and go to law school, and I ended up hitting it off with this band. And I was like, well, let me see how far this can go. Let me pump the brakes. You know, I took a job at a coffee shop. I started going to ACC, studying music classes, thinking like, well, maybe I need to get some real music knowledge here, you know. I started studying music production and taking bass lessons for the first time ever, taking proper lessons, drum lessons, playing in ensembles and things. And then we started touring with the band. You know, it just kind of steamrolled from there. It was just like, okay, this is happening. And I kept telling myself, well, just pump the brakes. This is going to run out of gas. I'm going to get tired of it. I'm just going to have fun while I can, you know. Me and my homies are going to be on the road. We're going to be seeing places. We're going to be having fun. You know, I thought, I even put a date on it. I said, by the time I'm 30 years old, if this doesn't pay off, I'm out. You know, I'll record an album. This will be my experience. I'll look back on this one day as like, oh, that was my youth. But I got to live my dream and do that thing before I settle down or whatever, you know. But, you know, they have a saying in Spanish, you know, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right?
Or
what?
Real. That was real.
Or yeah, or they.
Oh, go ahead.
or they say, you know, life is what happens when you're busy making plans for the future. It's same thing.
T. Okay, well, how did you like stay motivated through all of that, you know, to continue to be creative consistently?
Well, I mean, again, it was like it was super inspiring my life and what I was seeing, you know, on a day-to-day basis. I was what I had always been told was being challenged by my experience. You know, this thought that like, oh, you can't make it as a musician. That's not a thing that you can do. That's, you know, I always was reading. I was always studying. You know, I was always going to the library and finding books on the music industry, on playing music, on reading biographies of great musicians. I've always been a huge jazz fan. I was reading biographies about all the jazz musicians out there and seeing their stories and learning about how people fall into this sort of thing, you know. And I just started to have more faith that maybe there's something here. Maybe I can do this for a little while, right? And I don't know. It was just kind of like I was studying music. I was doing this. I started to think like to change my plans. Started to be like, well, maybe I won't be a lawyer. Maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll do that. But I never had like a plan there. It's just like gathering more information. I was just gathering information and learning how to make music, learning by doing, learning how to book bands, how to put together shows, how to musical direct, how to play instruments. You know, all this stuff was just like I learned it by doing it. It was just like by necessity. Like, oh, we got a gig. How are we going to promote this? I guess I got to learn how to promote. You know, we got to sell some merchandise to make some money. Okay, well, I got to figure out how to make merchandise. You know, we got to put together a website. Well, I guess I got to figure out how to do that now. We can need a video. Let me figure out how to edit that, put together a photo shoot, all these other things. I learned it by doing it. Nobody told me how. It was just like we needed to do this, and we had our own community together. But yeah, you know, like I said, we were touring and all this, and I was like, okay, I put a time limit on it. Like by the time I'm 30, I'm out. You know, if this doesn't happen for me, and I was still struggling. You know, I'll be honest. We were touring and all that, but I was like staining and laying concrete floors and working at coffee shops and stuff. Just doing side hustles. You know, probably around the time.
You say you was laying concrete floors as a side hustle?
Yes, like staining them and cleaning them and scoring them. You know, it was just like, you know, at a certain point when we started touring more and more, I was like, I can't hold down a regular job, and so I made probably the best decision I made my whole life, or one of them. You know, next to marrying my wife, what was to say, you know what, I'm gonna take this leap. Like I had no belief that maybe it was going to happen really, but I was still like, I have to do this. Like I'm young. I was like, I think 26, 25 at the time. I was like, I was like, I got to quit my job. I got to dedicate myself to music full time and just grind it out. Like if it doesn't happen, I'm not going to get another chance. So I took that leap. I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be a musician, whatever that takes. You know, that meant side hustles galore. That meant scraping and surviving. That meant like 5 dudes living in a house on the east side with no air conditioning, all that kind of stuff. You know, my parents were still supportive of me, but you know, I kept telling them, "Oh no, I'm gonna go back to school. I'm gonna get this thing together." You know, by the time I'm 30, I told them that, and they're like, "Okay." But what ended up really setting it off was that probably around 2006. We got our first real manager. Up to that point, our saxophonist, Dave, had been our manager. And we got our first manager, a real manager, who saw how successful our band was, saw that we were touring, and he did the numbers at the time and saw that like Latin music was about to blow up. You know, the Buena Vista Social Club and Shakira and all this stuff was about to happen. And he saw that, you know, and he was like, we need to get this band working right, you know. So he took over the band, started helping us promote in ways we hadn't known before, and connected us with some people. And that's how we got in with Prince. You know, he was friends with Prince's manager, And you know, I talked about that last time, so I don't think I need to talk about it too much, except that by the time I was 30, on my 30th birthday, I was playing a private party for Prince at a hotel in Beverly Hills with all of these like famous people everywhere. It was the Golden Globes party, so it was all like celebrities, and there was like paparazzis flying overhead, and Lindsay Lohan passed out on the floor, and you know, everybody was there that you could think of. You know, Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Cruise and P. Diddy was there, and you know, Bruce Willis, Demi Moore, Ashton Kutcher, all those people were there. And that's when I was like, okay, this is what I am. I'm a musician. This is what I'm gonna do.
Period. Dang, that's crazy. I mean, okay, well, how did like the music publishing stuff work? Like, how does all of that work out? Essentially.
Music publishing is, man, that's like, okay, so first of all, music publishing is like the accounting of the music world, right?
Right.
So it's not super interesting, but it is also a way to make money, right? And there's various facets to it. First of all, when you write a song, you have what's called the writer's side, and then you have the publishing side, right? And when you record that music, you have the writing side and what's known as the master side, right? So when you write a song, again, like I said, it's like the accounting of the music industry. So there's a lot of, you know, boring minutia, perhaps, but you have the person who writes the music, and then you have the person who writes the lyrics, right? Those are the two sides of the songwriting side, because that's what you can copyright, technically, of music, is you copyright the melody and the lyrics, right? You can't copyright, like, for instance, reggae style jam or whatever. Like, you can't copyright a chord progression or whatever.
Right.
But you can copyright a melody and lyrics, right? So that's the instrumental and the lyric side. Then the publishing side is who owns that, because you make agreements with people known as publishing companies, who then manage that catalog of music, right? Now, in addition to that, you have recording, what's called mechanical publishing, right? That's like, if you were to record this song that you just wrote, like say I wrote a song with the lyricist, right? I own 50% because I wrote all the music, and the lyricist owns 50% because they wrote all the lyrics, right? And then we both split the publishing, just for the sake of keeping it simple for now, right? So we're 50-50, right? I got 25%, which is the music, 25%, which is the publishing. The other guy got 25%, which is the lyrics, and 25% of the publishing. If somebody just gets the instrumental of the track, that other guy doesn't get anything. If somebody gets just the lyrics and rewrites the whole melody, I don't get anything, right? But then if we go and record that song, then you have the master side of that, right? Which is the actual sound recording. That's what, if you're like a hip hop artist and you sample music, you're sampling the sound recording, but you're also sampling possibly the melody or the lyric, right? So it all gets, like I said, it gets a little bit more complicated at that point. When it comes to publishing, you sign licenses, which is called a sync license, whenever you synchronize your music with something else, like a visual element, like a commercial or a movie or something like that, right?
Right.
Those are what we call sync licenses. There's also mechanical licenses, which is anytime a copy of your music is sold, like if I made a CD or a record, somebody buys that CD or that record, I'm supposed to get paid a certain amount for my part of that music, right?
Right.
I could break it down, but it's like, again, it's like algebra. It'll put everybody to sleep here.
Dang, yeah, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That is a lot. I mean, okay, so you've done a lot of stuff in the music industry. It's clear, you know, a lot about, you know, what's happening in the business side, what's happening on, like, you know, like the performer side and different things like that. And I just wanted to know, like, what do you think is the future for the music industry, or how do you think it's going to improve in the future?
And that's the That's the question that everybody's asking, and I honestly don't know is the answer, because we are like in uncharted territory as a world right now. So it's very difficult to know. I can say that I have seen the music industry change like 3 or 4 times in my life since I've been a professional musician, right?
In what ways? I said, in what ways?
Well, when I first started recording music and touring with my band, before I met Prince and all that, when we was doing stuff, you would print a CD and people would buy CDs. You know what I mean? And we even had an offer from a record company, from Universal Music Group, in Mexico, that wanted to help offer us a record deal, and we passed on it because it was the old-fashioned record deal, the ones that everybody complained about back in the day, where like they own everything and you're like a slave to them, you know. And we're like, no, we want to own our masters, we want to own our music, you know, we want a partner here. We don't want somebody who's calling the shots. Like, we're not going to give anyone the control to determine whether our music gets out or not. That's on us, you know. The traditional model back then would be like, we pay for everything, which is a loan, and then you sell your product and pay us back, and then you get what's left over. But we don't have to give you any money if we don't like what you're offering, you know? So we were like, no, screw that. That's a bad idea. So we passed on that and we became independent. We put out stuff on our own and made partnerships with distributors who would put our music out at stores or whatever. But the rise of our band also coincided with the rise of something called Napster and sharing and MP3s, which y'all probably know about, right? So people weren't buying CDs as much anymore. It's been going downhill since then, to be honest. But so at this point, people are just ripping off music. You know, record companies are going broke left and right. And the new model that they propose to fix that is streaming. And everybody's so busy fighting about how streaming works that some people just sneak in through the back door and they're like, hey, guess what? We're Spotify. We're just going to do this anyway. You know, people are trying to sue Napster and trying to shut it down and make agreements. And while that's all going on, Spotify beats everyone else to the punch, right? So that changes the game all over again. Now, not only is nobody buying CDs, but nobody's even downloading the music anymore. Now they're just like streaming it. They're borrowing it. And the musicians are getting even less now, because at least when someone was stealing your music and putting it on Napster, they had to get that music from a CD. They had to buy a CD and rip it off your CD, you know. Now they don't even have to do that. So now the model has changed again, you know. When I was coming up, radio was the big thing. You wanted to be on the radio. Now, radio's not even that relevant. You want to own as much content as you can and have it on as many formats as you want. You want it on YouTube, you want it on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever, as well as CDs, as well as digital download. And it's just like all these tiny streams of music income. However, they all have to go through middlemen now. You know, the big misconception is that nobody is paying for music anymore, but they are. They're just not paying the musicians anymore. They're paying Spotify, they're paying Apple Music, they're paying their internet cable provider, they're paying for modems and for computers, they're paying for software, you know, they're paying for hard drives to store it, and they're paying for fancy phones that can play it. So like the same amount of money is still being spent. It's just not going to artists for their music. Music has become what we call a loss leader. You know, it's like you invest money in this, but it's more of a promotional cost. It's a way to get people to come to your show, to buy your merchandise, or to stream your stuff, go to your YouTube and, you know, see an ad so you get ad revenue. You know, there's all these other tiny little streams of getting money. But now we're in yet another untold transitional phase, because the biggest piece of the pie that was left for musicians was touring and live performance revenue. And that's what everything was kind of feeding into. It's like, okay, if you can be big, you can charge tickets to your show. People go to your show, you're gonna buy merch, you're gonna get a piece of concessions, you're gonna have sponsors sponsoring your event that you're gonna get money from. You know, you're gonna wrap your tour bus brought to you by Monster Energy or whatever. You know, you're gonna wear the T-shirt or whatever it is, get the guitar from Fender and do interviews talking about how great their Fender guitars are. You know, you had to find all these other unique avenues for income, and a lot of those are gone because they were all feeding into promoting you as a live performance situation, you know. And now there is very little of that. So right now, the biggest piece of the pie that everybody seems to be shifting to, there's a lot more streaming going on, but that's like such a small amount of money that you have to get a tremendous amount of streams. You know, you could still make some money doing that. You could still get some money off of YouTube and things like this. But the next thing that everyone seems to be going for now is syncs and mechanical licenses, which is putting your music on advertisements, on movies, and on TV shows, and in video games, stuff like that, because they actually pay you up front. They say, we want your song for our video game trailer for Xbox 2020. We'll pay you, you know, $50,000 for your song, and we're gonna have this all over the place on YouTube and on Facebook and on Twitter and on television, cable, and everywhere else, right? So that right now is where it's at. You know, we're also seeing a transition into live streams as a performance venue, but figuring out ways to monetize that is also a challenging thing, because right now it's really dependent on donations. People are trying to figure out ways to charge cover to see a band, or to create additional content that you can get for paying, like interviews with the band, them taking requests, being able to get something specific out of it so that you feel like you're getting something in return for your money.
Right.
Yeah, but it's very difficult right now. We're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and Alexa had a question about that too. They said some companies like Streamtime in Mexico are spearheading the pay-per-view concerts live online. Do you think this should be happening in Austin, or should each artist create their own streaming web front?
The answer is I don't know. I mean, in a perfect world, in my perfect world, artists are the people who create the music. They should own the means of production. They should be able to capitalize on the content. Like, one of the biggest frustrating things about the music industry is how many middlemen there are involved who all get paid more for stuff that involves less. It's like passive income, you know, like, for instance, having a format that hosts these things and they get to put ads up, they're getting paid, and you're just playing for donations. They're guaranteed to get paid. You know, you're not getting part of those ads. To me, the best format would be one where you get a piece of the ads, and you can even make direct sponsorship deals with people, but that it also has to provide some sort of unique experience that makes the content worth purchasing. You know, one of the problems with live streaming concerts is, like, people are like, well, why do I want to pay for a live stream when I can go on YouTube and see your old concerts right there that you had produced, that you paid somebody to record and mix, and it sounds better and it looks live and there's an audience, and you have the feel and the vibe of a live experience. Whereas now it's like, it's a little awkward. It's like, oh, it's a bunch of dudes at their house wearing masks playing. You know, it's a whole different experience, you know? So finding a way to make that experience something worth paying for, like I said, special content, like, here's a shout out to you. I don't know if that makes it. We take a request. We're going to play a song for this guy out here specifically, or we're going to sign this thing, or this is a one of a kind sort of situation that only you're going to get to see. Maybe it's like, we're going to play some content that's exclusive that you can only see here, that you can't download anywhere else. You know, I mean, you have to find a way to make it an experience. You know what I mean? Like, that a spectacle, really. And that's kind of where things were headed before. It's like, in order to make people want to go to a live concert, it had to be a spectacle. You know, it wasn't enough to just get there and play the songs like you heard on the album. People like, well, I could do this at home. You had to have a light show. You had to have projections and dancers and, you know, stuff that you couldn't get anywhere else.
Right. Okay. I mean, okay. Dang, that's like, I don't know, like that's sort of crazy to me. Like you, I don't know, it's like hard to like make money, I guess, because of like all of those different barriers. I mean, okay, but like
Yeah.
what advice, I mean, so what advice do you have for people who are sort of like coming into the industry? You know, like should they network with people? How do they know when they're getting played? You know?
I mean, first of all, networking is the number one thing, the most important thing. And if I have one regret in my life, it's that I didn't understand it better earlier. When I was younger, I had my crew and I stuck to them, and we didn't really have internet kind of situations at the time. So there wasn't like, it's crazy to think when I started touring, we had a book with a map in it, we didn't have like, oh, Waze, tell me how to get to the club. It was just like, okay, where do I turn now? Where do I turn now? You know what I mean? We had to print all that stuff up and look at it on a paper. You know what I mean? And now you can interact directly with your fans and your audience, and you can network and see the opportunities there. One of the biggest payoffs of being a musician is social capital. Uh, social capital is incredibly valuable. Being able to connect people, being able to have people make opportunities for you, or you make opportunities for them. This is like the number one thing that you get as being a musician. So you meet a lot of people in a lot of different places. You have a lot of experiences, and you can connect people and bring them together. That's really the role that music plays in society. So it's important to recognize that and value that, because that guy that you was in the opening band might end up being in the biggest band in the world tomorrow. The guy mixing sound at your show might end up working for a music company. You never know. So people can help you out, and you can help each other out. And that's really the main thing, is like building a community that can lift each other up. As far as being successful in this business, like networking is crucial. Being humble, being open for any opportunities that come up, being available and doing all the things that you have control over 100% of the time. Your work ethic, your punctuality, your respect, your attention to detail. Like, this has nothing to do with talent. This has everything to do with your mentality. I don't know how many talented cats I know who fell by the wayside because they just thought, I'm too talented for this. They thought they were already there. And the problem is that the world is full of talented people, and the ones who get ahead aren't always talented. It's the ones who hustle to get ahead, the ones who network, the ones who communicate with one another, So that's the most crucial element above all. But beyond that, you really just have to diversify and keep your mind open for whatever opportunities are out there. See how these skill sets translate to other things, right? How can you use these skills that you develop in the music industry to bring people together, but also to create podcasts, to be an interviewer, a spokesperson, a consultant, a person who installs sound systems, a person who builds musical equipment and repairs it, a person who's a music educator like myself, or a producer, a person who does music supervision and puts music inside movies and commercials. There's so many different facets and things that are involved here. It's a multimedia experience, knowing about video editing, graphic design, all of these different talents and abilities that you're using. What I know Carl says, harps on it all the time, the soft skills of being able to write. You're writing lyrics, you're writing bios, you're telling stories. These are all marketable skills that you need to diversify and have available. Because if I've experienced one thing, the music industry is just constantly changing. You can't predict where it's going to go and what's going to happen next. The best way to be prepared for whatever happens is diversify. When my live music income went away, I didn't just be like, oh, well, shoot, I'm just going to have to wait till they got a vaccine. It's become like, no, I got to teach music. I got to take bass lessons, music production lessons. I got to give speeches to people like y'all. I got to do whatever I can to go back to school. I got to do all these different things and be flexible and open to that. Whatever opportunity is there, that's what's going to keep the boat afloat and allow me to continue making music.
Right. I mean, and what do you think are the best ways to sort of push boundaries while maintaining realistic expectations whenever you're first getting into the industry?
Uh, well, I mean, pushing boundaries is always important. You know, I mean, there's some boundaries, I guess, like creative boundaries always need to be pushed. You know, that's how you break through. That's how you become an innovator. That's how you get your name known, is pushing boundaries and trying stuff that hasn't been tried before. You know, there are no like mistakes or failures. There's just learning opportunities. You know, if it doesn't work, you learn from that. You learn why it didn't work and what you could do better next time. You know, I don't. For every successful endeavor I've been on, I probably had 20 that just fell flat or never got off the ground. You know, so you keep plugging away, and that's crucial. You don't want to push boundaries that are disrespectful of others. You don't want to push people who aren't comfortable being pushed, obviously. But you know, that's how you stand out, and that's how you grow the conversation. You know, is pushing boundaries. I forgot the second part of the question though.
I said it's pushing boundaries while maintaining realistic expectations.
Expectations is a huge one, right? And this is something I tell my students all the time. Is you know, Jay-Z said it. He was like, if you have an idea and it's in your head, that's a dream. But if you write it down, it's a plan, right? So you have to have a plan. You have to have goals and structure. And that's not like, again, there's no failure there if you don't achieve that or if your goals change before you get there. You know, I always have like sayings and quotes and stuff to keep myself on track. Another one is Eisenhower, former president and General Eisenhower. You know, he said, the plan is nothing, but planning is everything, right? So you always want to have a plan, but you always got to be ready to scrap that plan, right? The main thing is to have the ability to make plans. Having the ability to plan is crucial, because when your goal changes and your plan changes and you have to pivot and do something else, you have to be able to do that quick. You know, you need to be like, okay, scrap that, onto plan B, onto plan C, whatever. You got to be able to be flexible minded. So having goals and expectations is crucial. I don't know exactly what is a realistic goal, to be honest, because my goals originally, I thought I couldn't set an unrealistic goal for myself, because it would be a failure if I didn't achieve it. I never set a goal like, oh, I'm gonna be a musician and win a Grammy, and it happened. You know, maybe I should have set those goals for myself, and by the time I got there, I would have been on to the next goal. I would have been like, I'm thinking about the next thing. You know what I mean? It's only in the last, you know, 10 years or something that it's become super important to me to always have goals to strive for. And like they say, the objective isn't the point, you know, it's the journey, and the objectives are just to kind of help you stay on your path. That doesn't mean your objectives won't change, your path won't change, whatever, but it gives you a sense of momentum and a sense of directionality that is crucial.
Right. Okay. I mean, dang, you're doing like a lot of cool stuff. And you've been in the music industry for so long, and now you're like getting a master's degree, 3 of them. Like, how did you like make that transition? Like, why are you doing that like right now? Like, who do that?
Hold up, I'm only getting one master's degree.
Oh,
I'm getting a master's degree in advertising,
right.
and that's, you know, that kind of just happened, but it was like timely. You know, I was like, I wanted to pursue further education. You know, I'm not as young as I used to be, and at the time I was like, you know, I don't want to be in a tour bus and a tour van when I'm 60 years old. You know, I'm married now. I still want to play music, but I want to have like other ways to do it that don't involve the grind and you know, there's just a lot of wasted time involved, to be honest. It's like you're driving and traveling a lot. I love to travel. I miss that. I love playing live, but I also don't miss being stuck in a van for 8 hours driving from LA to San Francisco or whatever, driving home from Tennessee or whatever it is. You know, I don't miss the long drives, the sitting around and all that, you know. And the older I get, the more I'm like, man, I want to be home with my wife and my dogs, with my garden. You know, I could still play music and travel, but when I travel, I want to see stuff and experience life. I don't want to just be like, here's the club, here's the hotel, here's the road, here's the club, here's the hotel, here's the road. You know, so you know, it just kind of grew out of that. It's like I wanted to find a way to transition and take advantage of what I had already accomplished in my life, you know. So originally I was thinking I would study communications. You know, I'm a communicator. You can see I'm a speaker and an educator. So I was like, I want to be a consultant. I want to help the music industry. I want to bring my abilities and my knowledge to people who could use mentorship. You know, I want to spread the message. I've promoted bands and tours and music albums for 20 plus years. You know, I've created marketing plans and merchandise, all this other stuff, websites, videos, graphic design. I was like, I have all these skills. How do I synthesize all this into something? And that's when it occurred to me that marketing and advertising does that. You know, it's kind of like a synthesis of all these skills that I have: communicating, salesmanship, graphic design, video editing, copywriting, you know, music, all these different things. You know, it's kind of like a microcosm of like being a filmmaker or something, and, you know, or an artist in any way. It's a creative enterprise, but there's actually some money there, and it's something that I could offer to my community, because that's the thing that I see that really separates, to me, my community from other people a lot of times, like, you know, musicians or self-employed people, creatives, you know, don't know how to promote themselves, don't know how to market themselves. You know, they don't know how to brand themselves. You know what I mean? But they also don't necessarily have the funds and the cachet that, you know, Nike and you know, whoever else out there does, Amazon or whoever's out there promoting themselves and their products and their community. You know, nonprofits and bands and stuff need to know how to do that. And I want to help with that. I want to help people know how to brand themselves, market themselves, advertise for themselves. And I also want to create stuff, you know. I want to exercise my creative muscles to solve problems for people, you know. So when someone's like, how do I get knowledge of my product or my service out there, and how can I communicate that to my community? You know, I don't expect necessarily, you know, some rich dude in I don't know, in like Colorado who's like snowboarding to know how to sell a nonprofit that teaches, you know, kids how to make beats on Ableton. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
that's just an example that hits close to home. But you know what I'm saying? Like I want to be able to help people connect with people who want their services.
Right. Dang, that's crazy. Okay. I mean, so what, I mean, just before we wrap up, you know, do you have any other final advice or anything that you're doing that's coming up that you want to tell us about? Yeah.
My number one word of advice is just to be, I said it already, you know, just be open-minded to opportunities. You know, they've done studies that people who think they're lucky tend to have better luck. But the reason is because they actively are looking out for opportunities, and they don't shut those doors when the opportunities provide them. Like, they see something like, oh, that might work, and then they go for it. Whereas people who are pessimistic about luck are like, that's probably not going to work. I'm just going to stay in my lane. You know what I mean? And so they shut themselves down before they even allow themselves to try, you know? And it's like there's such a fear of failure and that stigma, and that's really got to go. You got to be like, you know what? I'm going to try. I'm not failing. There is no failure. There's just learning. If I try and I don't succeed, that's a lot different from failure, you know? You've learned something. Maybe you've made an impact on some, maybe you've made an impression. Whatever it is, it's a growth experience, and there's no growth that comes from not putting yourself outside of your comfort zone. You know, a friend of mine once told me something that I also tell my students, which is like, if you don't suck at what you're practicing the wrong thing. It's super profound, super true. If you're good at something, you don't need to practice that. You already got that. If you're bad at it, then keep at it. Don't shut it down because you're bad at it. Be like, oh, I can't do this. You know, you say, okay, I'm gonna improve on this. I'm gonna get better. You know, when I'm playing the bass, if I can already play this thing, I'm not gonna just play that every time and then pat myself on the back. Oh, I'm so good. You know, it's like, okay, what am I struggling with? That's what I need to work on. You know.
Right. Dang. Okay, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was really interesting being able to hear your story. You gave so many really good nuggets that I appreciate so much. It was like really good. Like I was like just blown away. Like I was trying to keep up with my notes when you was going. Um, but yeah, but yeah, thank you so much for coming. This was an awesome virtual talk. And if y'all in the audience want to see more virtual talks like this or hear more information, make sure that y'all keep coming back. We have awesome people just like Greg who come on every week. We tune in. I mean, we go live every week at 1 p.m. on Thursdays. So you can tune in at that time. You can also visit the E4 Youth website to look up more information about Greg, what he does. Links will be on there and different things like that. But other than that, it was good talking to you, Greg. And so I'll see y'all next week.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye.